right, guys, welcome back. You are in the final hour of Fantastic Fridays. All right, so guys, for Talk the Ting with Kim, today we will be discussing, or basically trying to understand mental health more, right? And then to help us with this, we have Dr. Brian Kazaara, resident in Department of Psychiatry at the University Hospital of the West Indies. All right, so Dr. Kazaara, welcome.
Yes.
Thank you for braving it, because we know so the road stay away. I know it's rainy, all of that. And then, Fridays usually have traffic and all that.
Yes.
So we appreciate that you took time out of your evening.
I'm happy to be here.
To be here with us, all right? So we know we've been talking about, Mental Health Awareness Month so far. So I want you to help us to understand what mental health really is, because I think we talk about this a lot, but people don't really... We just, as Jamaicans, might just see it as mad. Somebody was mad, we just say somebody mental. That's all we know.
Yeah.
And we put it under that big umbrella, mad, right? And that's not what it is. So we want to know what mental health really is and why is it so important for us to raise awareness.
All right. So, again, thank you for having me here, Kim. So, all right. And I'm really happy that you mentioned that so many people in our culture, once you say mental health, once you say those two words, immediately they think mad.
Mad, that's all, nothing else.
Straight.
Yeah.
Bellevue.
Yeah.
And there's so much more to mental health. So to assist me with this, I actually decided I would want to quote the World Health Organization's definition.
Yeah.
Because it's honestly one of my favorite definitions of mental health. And I do think it captures it quite well. So they say that mental health can be conceptualized as a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community, right? It really, I know it's a mouthful, right?
Yeah.
But I think it captures it. So I want to actually break it down into the individual segments. So first, it starts about a state of well-being.
Yeah.
Now, we all know, sometimes you say you feel under the weather.
Yeah.
You're not feeling,
or you feel outside, or somebody asks how you feel. Meh, blah.
Not in my right mind.
Yeah, So I guess those would all fall under that.
Exactly. So those are just some of the regular daily terms we use when we're not feeling 100%, when we don't feel well, right? And so outside of course, physical ailments, if you have a cough or sneeze or something like that, sometimes psychologically you're not 100%.
Yeah.
And mental health, as far as we're concerned, is when you feel well in that department.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Right.
And the second part I really like, when it says the individual realizes his or her own abilities. That is a part of mental health. Being able to, if you have issues with self-esteem, for instance, that can serve as a huge barrier to being able to realize your full potential. So think of it that way. If you are dealing with traumatic experiences that cause you to have to stop and pause before you decide to do something, or before you can even engage in activities that you normally would want to, that's also something there. So we also conceptualize it as an ability to be able to realize your full potential. The next part of the definition is coping with the normal stresses of life. Now, there's I don't know, I haven't met anyone yet that goes through life without any form of stress.
Right.
And certainly not in Jamaica. So being able to deal with those stresses. So a lot of people think, okay, mental health is when stress comes on you. But no, mental health is actually being able to deal with the stress as it comes to you. That's a skill. So just like we have a skill, to simple things like walking. These are skills we learn at an early age. Dealing with stress is a skill we learn at a very early age. Because most of us can manage a little stress better now than when we were 5 years old.
True. True.
Exactly. You don't get your way, and all of a sudden you start crying.
You throw a tantrum in the past.
Right, exactly.
Most
can't do
that
of us
now.
as adults. Most.
Exactly. We try not to do that now. Right?
So that's a part of mental health. Now, some stresses are excessive. Some stresses are prolonged. And for those, certainly, there are treatments available, and we'll discuss that later on in the segment. But being able to deal with stresses, we consider that a part of mental health. Can work productively and fruitfully. I think we kind of covered that already.
Yeah.
Because once you have the state of well-being and you're realizing your full potential, you'll be working productively. And this last part, really important, be able to make a contribution to his or her community. Good mental health isn't just something inside you. It's something that comes out. So,
and we're not talking about physical community like who lived on a mattress lane or nothing.
Right,
we're talking about your surrounding environment.
Precisely the places that you're around every day.
Yeah, okay.
Say.
Just
so
in case anybody thought we talk about you, if you're not, it's something in your yard.
No, thank
your
you.
environment.
Services are different.
Right, that's different. That's different.
But not exactly what we're referencing. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
So, your ability to, whether it be school, work, or just even amongst your group of friends, be able to be an active part of it. And that doesn't mean you have to be loud, you don't have to be the center of attention, but being able to actually just play a role and feel good in it. You'll find that a lot of persons with mental health issues, which is a separate thing from just mental health. We have mental health issues, then we have mental health at large. People with mental health issues a lot of times can't fully participate in school, at work, church, even in their friends, amongst their friends. So that really, to me, those things, big part of mental health. So that's how I would like to define it. So well-being, being able to realize your full potential, being able to deal with stress, and being able to contribute to your community.
I like that. That's deep. And why is it important for us to raise awareness?
All right. So in terms of raising awareness, when it comes to mental health, I think we have a lot of silent sufferers. That's the first problem. And it's for a few reasons. One, a lot of people don't acknowledge when they have mental health issues. A lot of people aren't encouraged to acknowledge when they have mental health issues. And a lot of us don't realize how to pick them up. So we have an issue where people aren't seeking the help they need.
Right.
A lot of times they don't even acknowledge that they need the help. And then the people around them, unfortunately, either don't acknowledge or encourage them to seek help. So for instance, Kim, if you break your leg today, I'm sure your mother, the stranger on the road, everybody will tell you, boy, if they see you walking and pain on your face. Exactly. Unfortunately, with mental health issues, sometimes it's not as immediately obvious. And so people go long stretches of time without really knowing what's going on, and they're suffering. And a lot of times, suffering can beget suffering. So a lot of times, even when we look at issues with domestic violence and a lot of the problems we see on the news, a lot of that stems from just ongoing mental health issues that weren't addressed and come out in different forms, in a dramatic way, sadly. So I think if we raise awareness, we can have less persons suffering, and as well, we may be able to alleviate a lot of the societal ills that we're dealing with right now.
But I like that you highlighted that, because one of the things I thought about when discussing or even coming up with this is that as Jamaicans, we tend to celebrate it to an extent when it comes to, I guess, badness or aggressiveness. Yo, me, I'm mad smuddy, right? We talk about that proudly, but then when it's really probably a mental health issue that most people probably even notice, because sometimes it's not encouraged, it's not acknowledged. Sometimes we see it, but we either avoid them or we just say, boy, leave them alone, or, that's what I realized. I realized that we celebrate to an extent, but then the real issues, we sort of ignore it, brush it under the carpet, or just say, boy, as long as we don't bother them, them no bother we, right? So that's what I realized. So I like that we actually going through this. So I know that you are an expert in this field, so I want to know, based on your experience, what are some of the most prevalent mental health conditions or issues in Jamaica? I know probably it's a wide array, but what are the things you probably deal with mostly from a day-to-day basis?
Well, thank you for swelling my head, Kim, but I wouldn't call myself an expert in the field.
I'm speaking it into being. Words are powerful.
Right, thank you. And exactly, words are powerful, and they do affect us in major ways. So in terms of some of the common or most prevalent mental health issues or disorders that we see in Jamaica, certainly major depressive disorder. When I think of just the general public, you do a survey and you ask persons. A lot of people may not even be readily aware that they may be dealing with that now. But if they were to get a formal assessment, a lot of them would actually meet the criteria
for depression,
major depressive disorders. And I've seen where, even in my personal life, because I fortunately have a little bit of insight, I might pick up one or two things myself. And then, when I talk to them a little bit more, I realize, wow, this person's actually dealing with clinical depression. So I would have to say that one is more common than most would think.
That was the one I was thinking of, because I think out of us wake up and we have a vibe. You don't, as you said, we don't feel to contribute to society or community today.
Right.
We get up, or we know we have deadlines to meet, and you just sit there, you can't bother.
Right.
Or you lock up, because I can say I personally done that. When I'm having an off day, I don't want to answer no phone, no message, no nothing. I sit down in my yard.
Friends or no family.
I will literally see family calling and just put it back down, and I'm just in that.
Kim, them I watch them.
No, no, but the thing is, no. That's why this segment is called Talk the Ting with Kim.
All right.
And it doesn't mean that you don't want to talk to them, but you're going through something.
Yeah.
And then because I probably don't even see it as, okay, Kim is probably going through depression, I just feel like, well, that's off today, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really why I felt comfortable expressing that, because it's true, a lot of us go through this. There's days where you just not feel like it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I feel like depression would probably be number one.
All right, but before I'm gonna just squeeze in a little question here.
Yeah.
That's not on the script here. So Kim mentioned you have the off day. Is that the same as just say, clinical depression?
Great question.
Or is there a difference? You know.
So great question, and there is a difference for sure. So I mean, when we talk about being depressed or sad, that's a natural human emotion, and everyone experiences it.
Right.
Fair, right? And we all have bad days.
So depressed or sad, that's just a mood,
right?
An emotion.
Exactly, as you rightly say, it's a mood, it's an emotion, right?
Okay.
And that's why we try and make that distinction between depression and clinical depression, or some would call it major depressive disorder. So, clinical depression or major depressive disorder does have a very precise clinical criteria. And if you don't meet that criteria, we as clinicians won't consider you to have it. I won't necessarily go into all the details because that would be quite wordy. I don't know if this is the time for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
Stuff
but some of the things that would be included in that, casually speaking, would be a persistent sad mood. So this addresses what you're talking about. This is someone who feels sad most days of the week. And during those days that they feel sad most times of the day. So this isn't a 1 hour every day of little sadness.
This is a little, you didn't get to see somebody. So
right. You're upset for 2 hours and then, or you're upset for 2 days. No, this is actually you feel sad most days of the week and during those days for most times of the day. Oftentimes we see it associated with a decreased interest or involvement in activities that we enjoy. It also associated with sleep issues, appetite issues, people not eating as much as they normally would, or eating more, frankly.
And it's the opposite.
Exactly, and it's the same thing with the sleeping issue. Some persons are sleeping too little, whereas a little too much.
Just sleep to sleep over the day, basically.
Right. Issues with chronic fatigue, issues with concentration, and of course, we know there's suicidal thoughts and ideations, which I'll also mention now to say is something I think is maybe a little bit more prevalent than we think. Not saying it's extremely common in our society, but maybe a little bit more common than we think.
As much.
Right. Especially the thoughts, not necessarily completing the action.
You may not carry out the act, but the thought is there.
Thoughts are there sometimes.
So that's depression.
Yes, and also anxiety and anxiety disorders. Very, very common. And I think kind of taboo. I realize when people have anxiety, they feel like they can't show it. Because I think in our society, it may be viewed as maybe a sign of weakness. You're anxious, you're afraid. What are you afraid for? You're anxious for?
Yeah.
So, and even for something like social anxiety, you're shy, and especially men, we're not really encouraged to be that way. So I would think that those are some common. That's not all of them, but those are some of the common conditions that you'll come across in our general, like when you look at the society at large. Those are some of the common things that you would see.
Okay.
I like that. So anxiety, because I hear also persons talk about, I usually suffer from that, but I've never really seen it as a mental health thing, So I like that you point that out, because a lot of persons I hear talk about it, but it's not something that we align with mental health. But then for the next question, we know with this pandemic that we've been going through, and the last 2 years has been quite a blur. It has revealed so much. So we know overall that it has taken a toll on, and it's continuing to take a toll on Jamaicans. With that being said, has there been an increase in any specific mental health disorders?
Kim, so I wish I could point to a study or some kind of official survey. I don't necessarily have access to anything like that. So I can't definitively talk on it. But what I can say from my observations is that certainly depression, again, going back to those common ones we're talking about, the depression and the anxiety, persons have been rocked by the pandemic, because what the pandemic has done for a lot of people is that it has caused them to take on additional stress, financial stress, relationship stress, a lot of things not only persons losing their jobs, so, broader unemployment, and then we're talking about inflation. And these things really do, let's put it this way, some persons may have been on the brink of depression before the pandemic.
Right.
That just tipped them over.
Yeah, definite depression now.
Added like probably 15 more things. Probably they were
That's
juggling
true.
5 already.
There you go. Well
hanging
said.
on.
Well said.
The pandemic just unleashed about 15 one time. So, yeah.
Precisely.
And usually these things, probably they had escapes before.
Yeah,
but the pandemic forced you to have to confront.
Stay inside.
If it's family issues, by yourself, whatever it is. So it really would have amplified
Precisely.
any situation you're going through.
Exactly. And then anxiety. I mean, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, guys, there was this fear of doom and gloom and everything.
Yeah.
We really didn't know, especially in
I
the
just
early
hearing
stage,
deaths,
right?
deaths
Exactly.
upon deaths
So
upon deaths.
we're seeing these death counts, which for many of us, it's the first time we've ever seen anything like that in our lifetime.
Yeah, that's true.
For many persons to see every day they're actually tabulating the deaths. So there's that as well. And so many people lost some persons close to them.
Yeah.
Close family member.
Yeah, one of the things that Andrew Holness said was that by this point, almost every Jamaican has either been directly affected or knows someone whose family has been affected by the pandemic in a real way, whether it be death, worst case scenario, or even hospitalization. So if you're someone already dealing with anxiety and stress in a big way, that's only going to add on top of it. So I would say that it certainly exacerbated the problem, and I think that's really what I've observed.
Okay.
I like that. And I was especially concerned about healthcare workers in the midst of the pandemic because they were like the forefront, and then to know that you're dealing. I always said that when we saw the daily updates, we're just seeing numbers. They actually know names and see faces and
bodies,
have persons who are desperate and begging you to do something to save my life. And, so trust me, my heart went out to the healthcare workers especially. All right, but we're going to move a bit from that because I've always heard people speak about childhood trauma, right? So I want to know, how does childhood trauma affect us as adults? Can it affect us?
Well, absolutely. That's a short answer. Absolutely. So I actually want us to talk about a concept, nothing too complex though. It's called adverse childhood experiences. And this concept was actually coined by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She was California's first Surgeon General. But I also mention her because she's of Jamaican descent.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it's great. And what she realized, she's a pediatrician by train, and what she realized was that when her younger patients, her children and adolescents who she was looking after, when they had a certain kind of history, so they experienced a certain kind of trauma, as you'd put it, their outcomes, their prognosis was significantly worse. So she started doing a study and she classified them. So I just want to address some of the common ones.
Yeah.
And I think us here in the studio and
yes,
our audience,
we definitely appreciate
a lot
it, and
of
the
them may
audience
relate,
will.
and they may relate to it. So one thing we look at is abuse. And when we talk about abuse, we're talking about physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and also neglect. Neglect is considered a form of abuse when you're a child, right? So, we hear stories of parents leaving their children at home. Even recently, there's been this trend of leaving your children in the car.
Yeah.
If you guys saw the news, you'd realize, unfortunately, some children even died in that way. So that's a form of abuse. That's a form of trauma. Now, also parental issues or caregiver issues. If you have a parent who's experiencing domestic violence and you witness that is considered a form of trauma. If you have a parent or caregiver in your home who is incarcerated, if you have a caregiver or parent in your home who has some kind of alcohol or drug use issue, even if you have some parent or caregiver at home who has a severe mental illness and you're seeing the manifestations of it, parental separation has also been noted as a really traumatic experience in children.
Yes.
And then finally, the death of someone in the house, especially a parent or a caregiver. And then finally, homelessness. And I don't think that's surprising. Children who have to live through homelessness or even institutional living. Those are all of those things there are clustered into adverse childhood experiences. And in terms of the implications, guys, they are quite massive. So this is where I can actually look at some studies and just share them with you quickly.
Yeah.
So listen to this. So firstly, we know, so I just gave you about 14 different adverse childhood experiences, right? And it actually, they say it's dose dependent. So if you have 2, your prognosis is worse than if you just have 1.
Okay.
I think about
because it's going to be double the pressure. Then.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, unfortunately, a lot of them cluster.
Yeah.
So if you grow up in a household,
An abusive home.
precisely,
It probably
think about
Have
a single
alcohol abuse,
parent,
yeah.
alcohol abuse.
There we go.
Maybe a single parent, probably either your mom only or your dad only, or
Right.
all of that does together. Probably homelessness as well.
There you have it.
You know, okay.
So all of those things, unfortunately, when you usually have one, you're more likely to have another.
Yeah.
So in terms of some of the implications, right? So we see that persons who experience these adverse childhood events are far more likely to have issues with smoking, alcohol, severe obesity, depression, of course. I don't think that's surprising. Heart disease, cancer. And just to give you an example, right? If you have about 4 adverse childhood events, your risk of becoming an alcoholic is increased by 7 times. And you have, listen to this one. This one I found interesting. By having these adverse childhood events, your risk of cancer doubles.
So, what?
Hold on, your
Cancer.
risk of cancer
You won't even
doubles.
see that. You didn't even see that.
No,
one
I
coming,
didn't see any
right?
correlation there
So
until
wait,
now.
cancer just what? Preying on your downfall? That's rough.
Cancer's looking out.
So it really works in these kind of not so obvious ways, these subtle
Yes.
ways, but it plays on our mind because ultimately, and this is why we go back to mental health, the way you view yourself, the way you think about your life and your circumstances affects the decisions you make, the people you interact with, the people you don't
Hold
interact
on,
with.
you have to go repeat that. Cause I feel like that one
Then
is
again, how you
a
keep yourself
sermon.
healthy and all of that stuff.
Precisely.
Yes.
There
That's
you
a
go, see?
sermon. So I have to go repeat that one before we
yeah, let's
for
connect
those
the
in the
dots.
back.
Let's get
For
that one
those
from
in the
you.
back.
Yeah.
So you say how you view yourself,
Right.
how you view your life,
Exactly.
and
Precisely.
all of that affects the decisions that you make.
Precisely. Precisely. We know persons who deal with chronic mental health issues are more likely to engage in unhealthy behaviors. So such as maybe excessive fast food consumption. Also, we know that they may, when you have self-esteem issues, you might be more prone to a certain crowd.
Yeah.
Or you may be more, especially in a young age, more easily influenced.
Yeah. You're
And so-
seeking approval.
Exactly. So if you think about all of that, and that can easily lead to issues with substance abuse.
Right.
So we know one of the clearest risk factors for lung cancer, for instance, talking about cancers,
Yeah.
is nicotine use.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know for sure the more nicotine use you engage in, the more likely you are to have lung cancer. So
Yeah.
This has been studied for decades. A lot of times we just think of it in isolation. Okay, this person smokes a lot. But we know they're
Right.
smoking a lot for a reason.
Right.
And that goes back to some of the mental health issues.
And I think that is, I like that you point that out because Jamaica, we're known for this, right? Not only for cigarettes, but we're known to have a lot of smokers here.
Yeah.
And I think most people just see it as a cultural thing.
Right.
But I think it's an escape
And then
from
a lot of
many
times,
things.
This is where we see the issues and we tell persons, hey, don't do this, don't do that. But are we looking to what is the root of
The
issue?
root of it.
So
Because I
it's-
know most persons do, just like how people drink, it's an escape most time. You don't want to deal with something. You don't want to think about something right now. So your option is to get high, your option is to drink. And then you have people who will go to the harder drugs just for an
Right.
escape.
And then
Right?
most of these things that he's mentioning, they're going to be what you call a continuous or a regular trend.
Precisely.
So if you're easily influenced into it, it's going to be a trend for you. You're going to continue doing it.
Exactly. And as we say, we pick these things up from early.
Yeah.
And we just do them for decades. So when you think about it, you're doing decades of damage
Yeah.
to your mind and the rest of
And
your
the
body as well.
Yeah.
But I hope, with that point being said, I hope that you guys, if it is that you know that you are someone who smokes a lot, drinks a lot, whatever it is, look into yourself to really think, is it something that I do just for recreation? You know, that I just naturally enjoy it and it just gives me the time of my life? Or is it something that you are trying to shield yourself from,
Right.
put out of your mind, whatever it is? Sometimes we really have to do that self-check
Yeah.
just to understand why we do. Because half the things that we do, there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't just get up and do something.
I think it's
you
more
know?
than half.
Right? We don't just get up and step on somebody too, or we don't just get
Right.
up and, you know?
Exactly, precisely.
Half the time there's a reason. And I think I've always told people that we lie to ourselves a lot. And people always say, oh, you lie to yourself. You're yourself. But You lie to
We don't
yourself.
trick ourselves and tell ourselves the other answer, but we know.
The other answer,
Yeah.
but then you know in your mind that that's not it, right? All right, so I love that you touched on that. So what I want to know now is,
Before we go into that segment, people,
Okay,
we're going to continue the discussion after the break. So
Yeah.
don't go anywhere. Listen, we're inside the segment, Talk the Ting.
yes,
with Kim.
learning about mental health. I know I've learned a lot so far. I hope you guys have.
And we're here in studio with Dr. Kazaara, resident in Department of Psychiatry at the University Hospital of the West Indies. We'll be right back, people. Fantastic Friday. If you're not learning something,
If you're learning something or even have a question,
Yeah, drop them on
at
the
least
live.
one question, drop it on the live.
News Talk 93 FM. Heard everywhere.